Wetlands are dynamic and diverse environments where a wide range of conditions create critical places for a wide range of wildlife to thrive. In some cases, these wildlife are conspicuous, like massive flocks of migrating waterfowl, lone foraging birds, turtles basking on a log, or muskrats skirting the surface of the water. But for the most part, wetland wildlife, like all wildlife, are difficult to observe, especially from the air. So in this video, instead of showing shots of all the species of wildlife found to use Iowa's wetlands, we're going to explore the diversity of conditions found there that attract and support wetland-dependent wildlife. Over 100 species of wildlife of conservation concern in Iowa rely on wetlands for some key portion of their life cycle, like breeding, migrating, or overwintering. Hundreds more take advantage of wetlands for water sources, places to feed, or places to escape the elements. Now let's dig in on the characteristics of wetlands that create habitat for these species of wetland wildlife. Up first, the water. Of course, this key feature of wetlands is critical for their function and use by wildlife. However, it's not as simple as finding open water. Some wetlands, like fens, have functionally no open water at all, and instead just have saturated soils that support unique plant life some wetland-dependent wildlife need to survive. On the other end of this spectrum is the wide open water areas of shallow lakes or large riverine wetlands. Different species of wildlife take advantage of different manifestations of water in wetlands. The depth of water is important for wildlife too. Some species of wetland wildlife rely on exposed mudflats created by receding water lines, like the dozens of species of shorebirds that migrate through Iowa in late summer or early spring. Without moist, bare soils and wetlands, these birds wouldn't be able to fuel their migration. Shallow water areas, or those less than about 18 inches deep, are critical for other species of wildlife like dabbling ducks that feed on seeds and insects submersed below. Similarly, long-legged wading birds like egrets and herons rely on shallow water to stalk their prey. Deeper water is important for birds that dive for their prey like these American coots and other diving birds. Deeper water can also be important for some species of reptiles or amphibians, especially turtles that burrow into soil in deep pools of water to survive the winter. Variation in water depth creates variation in wetland vegetation, which is critical for creating ideal conditions for a diversity of wildlife. Along the margins of wetlands and in the shallowest areas, we often find dense stands of emergent plants like cattails, bulrushes, and wild rice that provide food and shelter for a wide diversity of animals. Many species of wetland birds, like marsh wrens, yellow-headed blackbirds, and Virginia rails, build their nests in these areas. Plus, this vegetation feeds muskrats and provides building materials for their huts where they can raise their young and spend their winters. Those huts themselves are critical nesting places for birds like trumpeter swans and sandhill cranes, and basking places for snakes and turtles to enjoy the warmth of the sun. As water becomes deeper, submersed and floating plants become more dominant, and these plants provide critical habitat for wildlife too. They grow seeds or serve as food sources themselves, or provide refuge for insects and other invertebrates that wildlife eat to survive. Some wetland wildlife are totally dependent on specific species of plants found in wetlands. The Baltimore checker spot, a beautiful, rare wetland butterfly, needs a plant called white turtlehead to lay its eggs and feed its caterpillars. White turtlehead only grows on wet soils in Iowa, most commonly in fens. Another important determinant of wildlife use in wetlands is something ecologists call the hydroperiod, or the time within the year that the wetland is wet. Many wetlands naturally go dry throughout the year. In fact, this is a critical aspect of wetland ecology for some species of wildlife, especially those that are preyed upon by fish. Fish are generally not common in wetlands, especially those with a shorter hydroperiod. When fish are absent, many invertebrates thrive and thus sustain more diverse and abundant assemblages of invertebrate eaters, like many ducks and other birds. Many breeding amphibians, whose larvae are consumed by fish, rely on wetlands with short hydroperiods where fish can't survive. That's why vernal pools or small wetlands that are only filled with water during the spring and early summer are the preferred site for many species of breeding amphibians, like spring peepers and blue-spotted salamanders. Vernal pools are also often the smallest wetlands we find in Iowa, and size is another important factor influencing wildlife use. Some species, like many amphibians and birds, like small wetlands and seek them out. Other species, like the king rail or eastern Massasauga, need large wetlands for their habitat. Most wetland-dependent wildlife fall in between these extremes, using wetlands across a range of sizes. Another factor that can influence wildlife use in wetlands is the degree to which they are connected to other aquatic or wetland ecosystems. Some species of wildlife, especially reptiles and amphibians, are constrained in their ability to move across landscapes without wetlands. So, when we find many wetlands clustered together or connected with one another through riparian corridors, we tend to find greater diversity of wetland wildlife. Connectivity of water also matters for some wetland-dependent fish, like the endangered Topeka Scheirer. This small minnow spends its winters in the main channel of prairie rivers and streams, but in the spring and summer spends its time in off-channel areas called oxbows that become accessible during periods of high water flow. It's another way in which the dynamic nature of water in wetlands is used in creative ways by wetland wildlife. Many species of wetland-dependent wildlife rely on more than just aquatic ecosystems, so what surrounds a wetland is the final important consideration we'll explore. Wetlands occur in a wide range of contexts, from urban parks to farms to grasslands to vast riparian forests. The land surrounding wetlands can be very important in determining which species of wildlife thrive there. For example, all across north-central Iowa, ducks like blue-winged teal and mallards build their nests in grasslands surrounding wetlands and then lead their young to the wetland to feed and grow. So for a wetland to be suitable for these ducks during their breeding season, they need to have grasslands surrounding them. We see similar patterns with forest wildlife, with many amphibians like the central gnu relying on wetlands in and among forests to thrive. Similarly, many wetland-dependent birds like wood ducks, hooded mergansers, great blue herons, and bald eagles all build their nests in trees near wetlands. All these factors, water depth, vegetation, hydroperiod, connectivity, and surrounding land uses, are remarkably variable characteristics of Iowa wetlands that together create the wide diversity of wetland-dependent wildlife we all adore. We hope this video helps you see wetlands through the eyes of the wildlife that live there, so you can help ensure they remain and thrive in our state for generations to come.